The events of Fallout New Vegas are sparked by the ambition of one man, Benny, chairman of the chairman, reconditioned tribal, and lieutenant to one of the most powerful men alive, Mr. House. In the game's opening, our player character, the Courier, is caught, ruthlessly shot, and buried in a bid to obtain the Platinum Chip. With the Platinum Chip in hand, Benny moves on to the next step of his operation to secure control over New Vegas. However, as we know, this plan is interrupted via intervention of the Courier, who ends up being the one to choose the fate of the city. Benny himself admits that his plan to usurp control over New Vegas is a long shot, but that's just because he hadn't finished rigging the dice yet. So the question stands, could Benny have succeeded in his plan? The immediate answer to the video is no. Benny could not have succeeded in his goal to control New Vegas. When our player catches up to Benny in the Tops Casino, a variety of options unfold. However, whichever path we take careers into only two options. Either Benny's death, or Benny undertaking stage 2 of his plan. This plan entails Benny infiltrating the fort to access whatever is hidden underneath the camp in the subterranean bunker. So, Benny ingeniously dobs Legion garb and makes his way to Cottonwood Cove. He utilizes a stealth boy to make himself invisible and takes his place on the barge traveling to the fort. Once the juice on the stealth boy ran out, his legionary outfit was intended to allow him to blend in with the rest of the camp and make his way to the bunker. Unfortunately, he made one key mistake. The legionaries of Caesar's Legion have all individuality stamped out of them, and while there isn't a uniform style of hair for the troops, they favour more austere and less showy styles, which is essentially the style that Benny had. His flashy haircut made him stand out from the rest of the tribe, leading to his capture. Under torture, Benny confessed to his attempt to access the bunker using the Platinum Chip. His fate is then left up to the Courier, which typically leads to his death. One option does exist that allowed the Courier to vanquish the Legion and then release Benny, upon which he disappears from the game. However, cut content shows that canonically, he would have turned up eventually to murder the Courier, declaring that no one would rule New Vegas but himself. Benny's attempt was bold, and it could be argued that had he just been less vain and messed up his hair, he could have succeeded. However, despite attempting to rig the odds in his favour, I believe the cards were simply just stacked against him. One could argue that the plan was rash given that Benny fled the Tops after the Courier visits him. He no longer had the luxury of time and actioned his plan in order to escape retribution from the Courier or Mr. House. However, the plan is the exact same one he undertakes in the event that the Courier chooses to pose no threat and even sleeps with him. He therefore had this plan in motion, regardless of the nature of the prompt. So, the goal to infiltrate the fort was destined to be a failure, and for the following reasons. He does manage to infiltrate the fort via barge, hiding himself from sight with his stealth boy, until it ran out of power, and it could be argued that if he just brought another one for the trip home, he would have survived. However, it's important to note that within the in-game universe, stealth boys are huge, clunky items. He would have been able to activate one prior to boarding the barge, but the chances of being able to carry another one with him would be extremely unlikely. And even when Benny made it there, with the stealth boy out of juice in his Legion disguise, it's not like legionaries get to come and go as they please. Legionaries are as much a slave to Caesar as the women carrying heavy loads on their back. They're regimented into contuberniums, directly reporting to an officer who then reports to another officer. Even in the NCR, a lone trooper is unlikely to have complete free reign in Camp McCarran. The Courier is allowed to come and go and wander around speaking to everybody at the fort, as we have the mark of Caesar. We're an honoured guest, with the free agency afforded to a frumentari compared to one of the common grunts. Caesar states that Benny did make it all the way to the weather station, in which lies the bunker accessed by the Platinum Chip, before being captured. But even if he had not been captured, he would have needed to contend with 3 guards, with nothing but his 9mm. And even if he did take them all out, the camp no doubt would go into high alert. Once in the bunker itself, Benny would come face to face with House's monitor. House already knew that Benny was scheming against him, but now would be faced with the direct knowledge that he is the Platinum Chip and will upgrade the Securitrons. Benny would have made an immensely powerful enemy out of House. And sure, Benny has access to upgraded Securitrons, but now so does House. And also, on that point, since Yes Man isn't even in the network, the person who would benefit the most would be House, since he has direct control over the robots. It would be the same as if the Courier had just upgraded them. So Benny basically would have handed the keys to New Vegas over to House and then trapped himself in a bunker filled with hostile robots and hostile tribals on the outside. Let's state for argument's sake that House is dead, with Yes Man uploaded, or at the very least that Benny is able to gain control of the Securitrons in the bunker. Sure, he has an army now, but there's only one way out of that bunker, and that's straight back into the Legion camp. Now, from the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, the robots are evidently more than powerful to annihilate the Legion. But that's half the issue. The whole plan for an independent Vegas was to keep the two big dogs at each other's throats, only to sidelight them at the last minute. If Benny comes charging out of the bunker with the Securitron army at his back, his only option would be to raze the fort to the ground. And if Caesar and a huge portion of the Legion is dead, then the Second Battle of Hoover Dam probably wouldn't even go ahead. Linnaeus didn't even want to invade, and since he isn't even in the region at the time, the Legion might just be redirected elsewhere to other conflicts. And at the very least, if it did still go ahead, it would have a greatly diminished army that would probably be heavily demoralized from their loss. However, as stated before, the entire purpose of ensuring an independent Vegas was done by sidelining both parties into exhausting themselves onto each other and then come in swinging at the end. In this event, the entire NCR army would be able to redirect their attention to New Vegas without having to face Legion troops in the east. This would then leave the NCR with free rein to come up with some pretext to annex New Vegas at this point in time, since they can redirect their considerable forces to strong-arming either Mr. House or Benny. The dream for an independent Vegas would die in the annexation of the Mojave, whether by diplomacy or force. Mr. House mourns the fact that slavery would be the future of mankind should the Legion win, but having to pay NCR taxes might just be a lot worse. Barring the simple fact that his plan to activate the Securitron army under the fort was doomed from the start, his plan wouldn't improve any further, even if he came out of it all alive. Let's say for argument's sake again, that the rest of the wildcard playthrough happens with Benny at the helm. He legitimately has no way to kill House, like none at all. Yes Man states that Benny was always scheming about how he was going to get into the Lucky 38, whereas the Courier is able to just waltz in the front door. Benny would therefore be stuck at an impasse where he either doesn't upgrade the Securitrons, or he does, but House is outwardly aware of his treachery. Mr. House would therefore know Benny was gunning for him, and he could be damn sure no human being would be able to enter the Lucky 38 due to this risk. But even if we explore the idea that House ends up dead, I don't believe the rest of the wildcard playthrough would go as smoothly for Benny. Unlike the Courier, he's a known quantity in the region, and he's known for being a sleazeball. The Great Khans wouldn't have a bar of him after he had ripped them off. They obviously aren't super essential, but it'd be better to have them on side than not. The White Glove Society would no doubt see themselves as above another one of the three families, and after all, why should he get to rule, but they don't? The Emertas are already actively plotting to undermine control of the Strip from Mr. House into their hands. This is even more likely to happen if Benny's in command, as they would have absolutely no loyalty or fear of his rule. Benny would also have absolutely no way to make contact with the Brotherhood of Steel. The Paladins and Knights of the Brotherhood would be incredibly important to either be neutralized or brought on side, as it's calculated by Yes Man that a Brotherhood insurgency would be the most dire opposition to an independent New Vegas. The Boomers might be able to be brought on side, but this is a maybe. So in this event, his only power base would be the Chairman, and even his grasp is fairly loose at best. Swank, his second in command, can be easily swayed to lead Benny to his death if he's shown proof that Benny is attempting to betray Mr. House. Swank outwardly is willing to choose killing his chieftain than compromising the status quo. He also expresses excitement when he learns that he's the boss once Benny dies. And this isn't to say that Benny wouldn't have any support, just that there evidently wouldn't be unanimous support from the Chairman. In the New Vegas comics, he killed a singer who was convincing other chairmen to return back to their tribal ways. It isn't much, but when the one core power base he already has shows signs of fracture, then it's definitely a sign of trouble. As discussed, he's widely disliked. There'd be no chance of a benevolent dictatorship, even if he does assume power as an absolute ruler. And that would be the largest issue with it all. The independent Vegas ending has long been debated by fans, with some claiming that it means the Courier assumes control of the Strip, whereas others claim that it leads to true anarchy, where the rule of the Strip is with the people who live there, rather than in one specific power block. And it's ultimately up to our own interpretation on what path our Courier takes with this. However, Benny does outwardly express a claim that he intends to rule Vegas alone. I don't imagine him entering into a coalition or triumvirate of any sort with other people in the region. He simply just wouldn't have the support to maintain singular rule over the region, even with the Securitron army at his back. So even in this outlandish scenario that he lays claim to an independent Vegas, I just don't see him staying in power for long. Essentially, in the opening sequence, Benny declares that the game was rigged from the start. And this is evidently true, just probably not in the way he intended it. Benny tried stacking the deck in his favour all he wanted, but the truth was that the game was rigged from the start. Just, it was rigged against him.